Welcome to Keeping Score. I'm Rick Horrow. Each week we bring you insights from the playmakers, deal makers, and rule makers in the world of sports. I'll give you my take on some of the items of the week using my 30 years of experience doing deals for teams, leagues, and players in the $750 billion business of sports. Plus, we'll talk with a central figure in the sports world. The views expressed in this podcast are my own and do not represent the views of Reuters. Let's get started.
Hello and welcome to Keeping Score. As you can tell, this is not Rick Horrow, but rather Amy Tenery, digital editor here at Reuters. I'm here today with reporter Hillary Russ, who has been on the front line of a very exciting story, and that is sports gambling legalization. And this month, she was actually in New Jersey for the first legal bet that was placed for sports. Can you tell me about the atmosphere?
Hi. Sure, the atmosphere was electric. New Jerseyans have been waiting for years and years. They've been battling it out in court, trying to get legal sports betting there. And so, hundreds of people showed up to place bets on their favorite teams on the first day. The governor is the one who actually placed the first bet, Governor Phil Murphy. And they kept the speeches short. They went right to the betting counter, and the throng sort of rushed after him. Later in the day, there was a separate sports bar area where people could bet and drink and have burgers. They got pretty rowdy in there as the day went on. So it was very exciting. It was kind of a party-like atmosphere.
This is something new and different.
Well, we were there. We spoke to players who were trying to talk to them about why they were placing bets, why they were so excited. My favorite was a British guy who just was so excited to be able to finally place a legal sports bet that he had problems sleeping the night before. And we got him on tape talking about why he was so happy to be there.
I've been waiting for this for years, since it's been in the makings for it. And yeah, I've been so excited about this, and eventually it's here. And I had a sleepless night tonight. Last night, I couldn't sleep with the excitement of coming down today.
And clearly, as you were saying, the governor placed the first bet. Now, other officials in New Jersey were actually pretty excited about this as well.
That's right. Former Senator Ray Lesniak was really fundamental for pushing this legislation several times through the state legislature so that the state could push it forward. And that's what the professional sports leagues ended up challenging in court. So he was obviously there as a huge promoter, as someone who was really pivotal in making this happen.
So first of all, this started when a friend of mine was arrested for placing a bet with a bookie on sports. And it was just very annoying. Charges were dropped. However, he was embarrassed for doing exactly the same thing that he could have done legally in Las Vegas. And then I saw what a great benefit this would be for the state of New Jersey to have the tourism and the economic benefit from people enjoying sports betting. I got my bet in for the New York Giants to win the Super Bowl, and since I've won a Human Rights Award in France, for France to win the World Cup.
Great. So now, clearly, as we've heard, the state officials and former state officials are quite excited about this. But Hillary, how much money is this actually supposed to generate for the states and for the state governments? Is it going to be this blockbuster tax revenue that some officials are hoping for?
Well, Amy, that's a great question. Part of that equation still remains to be seen, and it's going to probably vary from state to state depending on how they regulate it, how they tax it, what tax rates they choose to put on it. Some analysts are saying that it's not really going to generate this huge windfall like the states might hope, right? And so, for example, in Rhode Island, they've just yesterday pushed forward some legislation that would impose a 51% tax on net gaming revenue, which would be the highest in the country, and that's a ton of money, right, for little Rhode Island.
Right.
Other states might have lower tax rates. In the city of Las Vegas, where this has actually been legal the whole time because it was grandfathered into the 1992 law that was overturned by the Supreme Court, sports betting revenue doesn't really make up a huge percentage of the city or state's revenue. So it's nice. It's going to be nice to have for a state to ever have some more money coming in for any reason, but it might not be the huge windfall that some states hope it could be.
Right, and so, but what about also bookmakers? Is that going to be a burgeoning business and a potential revenue maker for them?
Sure. Right. Well, so obviously it's not just the states who stand to make money. It could be potentially some of the teams themselves with sponsorship opportunities. But clearly the bookmakers are looking to get a piece of this. It's, again, kind of unclear exactly how much they might make. There's been a widely cited estimate saying that the market overall in the U.S. could be about $17 billion. That would only be a portion of the roughly $150 billion annually that Americans already bet on sports illegally. So, for William Hill, for in particular, they're a UK-based company. They took a huge gamble on sports betting becoming legal in the United States years ago. In 2013, they made an initial investment in Monmouth Park Racetrack, again, before it was even legal here. So it's a really important market for them. They feel it's potentially going to be a big boost to the company.
And you actually spoke to the CEO when you were at Monmouth Park.
I did. I talked to him, and he explained a little bit about why this is such a big day for them as well.
A lot of people, I think, are looking nationally at what's happening here today, and it's the start of. It's really almost the end of the beginning if you think about it that way, and the years of work that went into making today possible. So many people, starting with Dennis Drazen, who really was driving the effort in New Jersey, along with so many others, Governor Christie and Senator Lesniak, and all these folks who worked really hard for a long time to make today possible. And clearly, this is the beginning here in New Jersey, and other states have already legalized sports betting, and we'll be getting ramped up fairly soon. Mississippi and West Virginia and other states are studying the issue, so it's a big day. Just walking in here and seeing, all of our new employees who have been training here, getting ready for today is very rewarding, and clearly one of the benefits of the effort to bring sports betting to New Jersey. I think the U.S. Sports betting market is going to be the biggest legal sports betting market in the world, just based on population and income here in the U.S. I think it's going to be a big market, and so clearly it's going to be an important market for us and for a number of other people.
Now, obviously, as you mentioned, illegal sports betting, casual betting among friends in office pools, certainly never at Reuters, has been happening for years. But in your reporting, you found that a lot of sports leagues are actually openly hostile to the idea of legalizing this, and you spoke with a former prosecutor who's now in charge of investigations at Major League Baseball. And what were his sort of concerns here?
Right. So that was Brian Seeley from Major League Baseball. The leagues were not only openly hostile this whole time, but they were the ones who were fighting against the state of New Jersey in court, and who took it to the Supreme Court. And at a certain point, I think the writing was on the wall, and they had to realize that they just weren't going to win this one, and they had to kind of get on board. But they are still very concerned about the potential for game fixing, for corruption. They are lobbying state legislatures to try to get tools included in the legislation that they say they need to help them fight this kind of corruption. A lot of what they've focused on has been data sharing. They want to be able to get real-time game data so they can try and see if there's a spike that might point to some suspicious betting behavior. The companies are really not interested in sharing that data, I don't think. And in New Jersey, for sort of obvious reasons, their lawmakers are pretty hostile towards any of the league's requests. In particular, they've asked for money. Usually it's called an integrity fee, so it's sort of a small percentage of the take that they say they could use to increase staffing and increase the resources that they're going to need to be able to fight back against all this increased potential for game fixing and for corruption and cheating.
So it sounds like these leagues are going to have to figure out not only how to regulate it, but also, as you were saying, staff it and have a whole infrastructure in their organization to handle this. What are some of the other downsides that states or leagues might be facing as a result of this?
Right. There's always broader concern about sort of some of the negatives that any kind of gambling might bring to an area, whether it's gambling addiction is still a huge concern, and some of the things that go along with that, possible alcoholism and drug abuse, potentially violence. The casinos, for example, have pretty tight security, and a lot of bouncers. Are sports betting parlors going to have that if they're separate, or if they're at a racetrack? How rowdy is a crowd possibly going to get? Is it going to bring sort of negative element to the nearby communities? I think you see some areas trying to deal with that with a very small slice of the revenues going to the town where the sports betting facilities will be housed is one way to try to get around that, but it is a concern, and it's something you've seen other more mature global markets try to address in different ways as well.
All right, so we now have New Jersey that has, officially has legal sports betting. Is this like an opening of the floodgate situation, or is this going to be a very slow trickle of states that are going to be legalizing
Right,
this?
a great question. Most things that states do are at a slow trickle kind of pace. So it really depends. There might be a perception that it's going to open the floodgates and suddenly it will be legal everywhere, and that's just not the case. I mean, there are a handful of states, Mississippi, Connecticut, New York, a few others, where West Virginia, where they're kind of ahead of the game and they want to try to get this rolled out pretty quickly. And then there are other states that may be interested and just haven't really introduced any bills. And then there are some that might not do it at all, that are resistant for some of the reasons we just discussed. South Carolina is one of those states where they kind of want to do it, but they're very concerned about lifestyle, about the negative impacts of widespread sports betting.
So clearly there's a range of unanswered questions that we have yet to figure out beyond which states are going to be pursuing this next. What's still kind of up in the air in your opinion?
Almost everything is still up in the air. I would say I think we're not really going to know how much money states are actually going to make until this has been going on for a few years, or even which states will end up legalizing it and regulating it. We're not going to know the shape of that regulation, how many of the tools the leagues say they need they're going to actually get, if they're going to get money in all states or just a couple states. We don't know how long it's going to take William Hill to break even in New Jersey. For instance, it could take 2 years, it could take 5 years. In terms of when they're actually going to be making money on this proposition. So there are a lot of unanswered questions remaining.
Yeah, and certainly whether or not integrity fees are going to be a big deterrent for gamblers even, who are saying, well, why would I pay an integrity fee when I can head over to my buddy's apartment and just kind of casually exchange money over a game. So there's definitely, it sounds like, a lot up in the air, and this is certainly a developing story and one that Hillary Russ will be all over in the coming weeks, months, and possibly years. So Hillary, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for listening to this edition of Keeping Score. Our producer, Alex Cohen, associate producer, Freddie Joyner, assistance provided by Carla Swadek, Tanner Simpkins, Jesse Leeds, and Jamie Swimmer, and the executive editor of Reuters Digital, Dan Colarusso. I'm Rick Horrow. Thanks again for listening. See you next time on Keeping Score.